that there is something actually that can be done by us as waste producers to make the conditions of waste management in Indonesia better. Sorting waste, not just reducing waste, but also sorting waste.
Waste pickers play like a very big role in Indonesia's waste management landscape because 83% of our waste management system is actually run by the informal work.
Hi everyone, welcome to Breaking Barriers podcast by Global Future X. My name is Cazadira F, Tamzil, and let's solve the future now. We are on season 1, episode 3, and today we are joined by Managing Director of Nara Synergy, a waste management social enterprise, who's also my dear friend, Angeline Callista. Hi, Angel.
Hi, Azira.
Very nice to meet you again.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you here. So Angeline is very passionate in the field of social development. She does a lot of writing and also projects on the field of like migration and then waste management, and then also you're very passionate about the issue of like informality as well, how we can improve the welfare of those who are in the informal workspace and how we can provide more protection and appreciation for them, right? And we're gonna deep dive into all of those in today's episode, but maybe we can start a little bit, Angeline, with your background, your story, and how you got into the field of social development and lately with Nara Synergy Waste Management.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much again, Azira, for having me here. I'm very excited. Maybe I can share just a bit about myself first and my background. So I first got into like issues of social development and what is happening to people actually during my undergraduate year. Mm-hmm. So I took journalism, and then that experience is actually exposing me to like what are actually happening in the society. And then there are issues like workers on the street, and then those are the people that we pass them like every day, but like we don't really know what is actually happening in their lives, right? So I think that's what journalism exposed me, and that's why I started to feel like, okay, I think I need to learn something more about these people, and maybe I can do something for these people. So I'm trying to see where can I work where I can actually bring impact for these people. Mm-hmm. So I thought, maybe if I work for the United Nations, then I will be able to like bring impact. So I did my internship first at the UN during my last year in undergrad, and then I continued to work for them after I finished my undergraduate year. And that experience is actually exposing me to another thing that, actually, if you want to do something for these people, maybe in a better, not a better, but like in a broader level, mm-hmm. then maybe you can go for like policy making, because the UN is really influencing the policy. It's really influencing like the livelihood of these people. So that's where I decided maybe I should take my higher degree in this field that is still relevant to policy, but also in development. So that's why I took my master's in social policy and development. And there I learned about like issues such as gender, and then also like children, and then also about environment. And after I finished my master's, I a little bit like roaming around what I want to do next. So I started to work for like a nonprofit, and then ended up joining like the Government of Indonesia to see like what is policy making looks like, especially in the national level. So I was working there, and I really enjoyed my experience there because I got the chance to see the policy processes, and then try to make sure that the policy that we're doing is actually involving the people, and how to really see like to include the local context into like the policy making to create an outcome that is actually beneficial for the people. Mm-hmm. So after working for the government, and then pandemic happened, and I have to leave Indonesia, and it was a bit hard to like do like the distance working. So after a few months, I decided to leave my job in the government. And I think in Singapore, it's actually exposing me to a lot of different exposure because I see things from like the private sector perspective, and I see like how the global system works actually in Singapore. So it was really like an eye-opening experience for me. And because at that time I was there with my family as well, so that's why I decided to join like a private sector, doing like the consultancy where
where we became friends.
Yeah, where we became friends. Yeah, so I think it was a really good experience because before my background was in the public sector, and now I was in the private sector before, and how to see like the problems in the public sector, and we can actually use the private sector perspectives or the private sector ways to like solve issues in the public sector. And at the same time, I'm actually always raised in an entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
So right now I'm embarking a journey with Nara Synergy. Maybe you have mentioned it before. Like what my goal is actually from my previous experiences in the public sector and also like the private sector, how can actually help businesses to be better, maybe for like the people, the planet, the profit as well, eventually.
Triple bottom line.
Yeah, triple bottom line. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with Nara Synergy at the moment. Yeah.
When I think of my friends and who has the most complete portfolio, I would think of Angeline. Angeline's like top of mind, because as you mentioned, you've had experience in the Government of Indonesia, you've had experience in the UN, you've had experience in the community sector, and then also in the private sector, right? And I think that's precisely why I'm very excited to have you here today, because here at Global Future X, we believe in collaborative governance. So basically how we can foster more meaningful connections and collaborations between public, private, and community leaders, right? I think we do have a lot of talks already about like multi-stakeholder partnerships and basically working together, PPPs and all that. But how do we actually make it more enforceable, on the ground? How do we actually make things better, right?
Yeah.
And I think for Nara Synergy now, the focus is on waste management, right? And there's a lot to unpack there because Angeline and I previously worked in a waste-related project, right? So we've had a lot of discussions about this, and Angeline has a lot of very interesting insight. So can you tell us a little bit, Angeline, about the state of the waste management landscape in Indonesia? Why is it increasingly becoming a center for policymakers, especially plastic waste now?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because like it gives like it's a more complete perspective, like from the government side, and then also like from the public, like the what do you call it, like international organization side, and also like from the businesses perspectives. And I see like the waste issue is actually increasingly growing, not only like in the global level, but also in the national level, and also in the community level. Because as we can see that maybe when we talk about problems in Indonesia, there are a lot of problems, right? And people may think like the problems such as like hunger or healthcare or education are more urgent than like the waste issue. But actually when we talk about waste, right now at the moment it's already like comprising like all these aspects as well, because as we can see like the recent research, microplastics are found in human blood, right? And also for the environment itself, we know like a lot of waste at the moment are still like being transported straight away to landfills, and landfills are just like now in overcapacity. And there are a lot of people who's working in this sector actually, especially those in the informal economy. And if we can see it, maybe like in one landfill itself, like in Bantar Gebang, let's say, maybe there are 8,000 waste pickers who are working informally there. So it's a big sector in Indonesia, and definitely if we see from the brighter side, then it is actually growing, but there are a lot of problems like you mentioned, like to be unpacked in that area that we can actually do something. And combining like the perspectives itself, I think there are definitely it is increasing, but to to what extent, right? So how do we actually create a better visibility in the sector itself? So maybe government can also like try to see this better with like more data, or like companies with like better governance to see how they're actually producing their waste and how to like manage their waste in the future. Or even within like our community itself, how do we be more aware of our waste
and contribute better
and contribute better, of course, because most of the waste is from the household, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
yeah, as you mentioned, right, the majority of Indonesian waste, I think, is from the households, right?
Yeah.
And every single person would produce waste every single day, right? It doesn't matter like our profession or what we do, but we will always produce waste. And so to me, actually, it's quite surprising that waste only became a thing of attention like maybe the last few years, where it's actually like very close to us, right?
Yeah.
Like we produce waste every day, and everywhere we go we see waste, right? But and this is something that I only just realized as well, that there is something actually that can be done by us as waste producers to make the conditions of waste management in Indonesia better, which is basically sorting waste.
Yeah.
Not just reducing waste, but also sorting waste. Can you tell us a little bit about why sorting waste is important to solve the waste issues in Indonesia?
Yeah. So I think like when we talk about waste management, sometimes it's very easy to say like, okay, maybe we can just do recycling, or we dispose it well, right?
Yeah.
But is that really like solving the problem, when it's actually like it is very important for us as let's say when like a lot of waste comes from household, and then we know that the household waste itself, like we should be the one who's like sorting the waste since the beginning itself, because once our waste, let's say when we put everything in our trash can and then we just leave it there and waiting for like
waste picker
to like pick it up, then maybe a lot of it can just like be transported straight away to landfills, right?
Yeah.
But like if we know that if we sort it, and then I think there are still it's starting to grow, like the awareness is still grow, like maybe we can hear a lot of people as asking like how do I actually collect my waste? How do I actually manage the waste better? And actually there are a lot of initiatives too at the moment that is trying to collect waste from households, which I think is great, right? Because that way that people can actually sort their waste since the beginning. And what is important is that a lot of people want to do this, but a lot of people don't know where to do this. And if they want to do this, how are they going to do this? So that's why it is very important for us to like actually educate the people and then actually like give what are the reasons that make people want to collect their waste, and also like how do they actually collect that waste itself. Yeah.
So when we actually, first and foremost need to all be, in agreement that we should take more responsibility for the waste that we produce, right? And the form of responsibility is basically by trying to minimize the waste that we produce, and also secondly, sort the waste so that before it gets to landfills, maybe there is a potential for it to be recycled or be reused for something else, right? Whereas if the waste is already mixed and contaminated, right? Like plastic waste contaminated with other waste, then basically it's probably not going to be recyclable, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we raise people's awareness. You should take responsibility for your waste, and your actions do matter at the household level, right?
Yeah, that's true. So it's really like maybe we've heard of the concepts of like a 3R1.
Yes.
Yeah, the reduce, reuse, recycle. So it really has to like start from us. How can we actually reduce our waste, right? By using like water bottle, or like by not using like single plastic bags anymore. Like we bring our bags, and then those are the ways that we can actually reduce it. And then also with reusing our materials, or even repurposing it. Like maybe if we have like the plastic bottle, maybe we can use it as like the pots, and those are the things that we can actually introduce to people too, right? Like into our community as well. And I think I don't know, I'm quite optimist. Maybe like I'm an optimist person. So like I also believe in the spillover effect of this kind of thing too. Like where we commit in doing something and then we know that our community or like people that are around us see like our actions and they can actually like
get inspired
and do that as well. Yeah,
that's right. So we've talked about what individuals and households can do to take more responsibility for their waste. And you mentioned earlier about the role of waste pickers who actually play a role in kind of collecting our waste from household to household and then transporting it to a landfill, right? But as you mentioned before, they are a form of informal workers, right? With very minimum protection. And, you know, for truth be told, like maybe not a lot of people appreciate their profession when actually they play a very important role in our waste management landscape. And for those of you who don't know, Angeline wrote a very amazing piece at a national platform on precisely the informality in the waste management space, how we can accord more appreciation and protection for waste pickers, or here we call it in Indonesia, pemulung, right? Piece was co-written by someone who I also hold as my mentor, and so I thought it was just a really striking piece. You should go check it out. We'll link it below. But yeah, you want to talk a little bit about kind of the main arguments in that piece, and you know, how do we provide more appreciation and protection for these people, these waste pickers?
So you're definitely right. Like waste pickers play like a very big role in Indonesia's waste management landscape because 83% of our waste management system is actually run by the informal workers.
Wow.
So it's such a huge number. And like I mentioned earlier, like in Bantar Gebang itself, maybe there are like 8,000 waste pickers, and that is the numbers that we know. How about the numbers that we don't know, right? And if we see it, like if we go to like this village or like the Kampung Pemulung, so like this waste picker village, then we can actually see like the reality of their lives itself. And why I say like waste is very important because again, a number of people are depending their lives. This is like their main source of income, right? And when we visit them, then we see that the reality of that place itself, you know, like maybe in their house there's no like toilet inside like the house itself. It's like lack of sanitation, and people got married in that area, and then people have like children in that area, so it becomes like a continuous cycle, right? And these are like the reality of informal economy that is faced by a lot of people, right? And there are several kampung pemulung in Jakarta itself, and it really shows like the inequality of the people itself. While they're actually helping us to solve our waste problems, but their life is very like lack from decent, right? So how do we actually provide like the protection for these people, or like the recognition for these people, right? So in the article itself, I argue there are several ways to give like recognitions for these people, including like if we can like employ them and then like give them like the social security, or like just register them into like the formal system, then they will be known by like the country or like those who are around them, right? So that's like the first step to make sure that they are seen. And another thing, maybe also like how we support them in building like the cooperatives itself for them, so that they can actually be recognized and known. And another thing is that with the waste pickers and like the decent livelihood problems, one of the things that we can do is actually doing like the incentives itself, right? Trying to give like a more proper livelihood for them. And how are we going to do it? So if we know like the waste situation in Indonesia, of course, there are a lot of informality, there are a lot of problems in the households. And how can we actually make households manage their waste? How can we actually incentivize households to make their waste? So at the moment, we're in Nara Synergy, we're actually building waste banks as well in the community. So like these waste banks, we incentivize people in collecting, sorting, and submitting their waste to the waste banks itself. And we create a system where we built like the secretariats of the waste banks, and there are the committees to it. And how are we making sure like the waste pickers who are previously in the informal economy can be included in the system, and they can be paid with like better livelihood, better salary, and also like be seen through like the system itself. So yeah, that's what we're currently doing, and that's what we're dreaming to like include more people, and again like the spillover effect in the future. So we hope that we can provide better incentive and also better recognitions for like people in the informal economy itself.
Right. So you mentioned before about like employing waste pickers, right? And there are efforts, like what you're doing, from Nara Synergy, but we can also perhaps think about, as you mentioned, like registering them to the national social system, right? We call it here in Indonesia BPJS for health and also for employment. But how are they not registered in that system? What is holding them back from registering? What?
Yeah. I think it's, as I mentioned earlier, maybe like a lot of them live in this area where there are lack of attention for people in this area, and it's still like the condition is still very far from decent. So a lot of them, maybe they don't even have like birth certification. So how can they they do like they have their social security? Yeah, even they don't have like the identity. So maybe it's so like the problem is still from there on the first start, right? So it's also, that's why like we're in Nara Synergy, actually, because we were born from like our sister foundation, Nara Creative. We are providing like educations for like the people in this area, also like for waste pickers, and then for some cleanup officers, and we're also helping them in like registering their birth certificate as well. Wow. Yeah, because we're helping them to get like the degree, like the equivalent to like the informal, but equivalent to like a high school degree and also like junior high school degree. So like we also help them to like get registered into the system so that they can be seen basically. Yeah,
that's great. And you were talking earlier about also empowering more people and households to collect their waste, sort their waste. Yeah. But how do you appeal to them? Is it just like from a moral perspective that like, you produce the waste, you should take responsibility for your waste? Or what kind of arguments can we actually also use to get more people to actually join the movement, right? Join your movement that the Nara Synergy and people like you are leading.
Yeah, I think, on the brighter side, there's like a growing awareness of this. Right. But of course, awareness is not enough, right? Sometimes. But like one of the most straightforward way for us to introduce it is because we know that there's like the incentives towards it.
Right.
So for instance, like from the waste banks that we built, within 1 month, actually one person, he can get like the value until like 500,000 rupiah just for selling his waste. Yeah. So I think this is like a very encouraging fact, right? And this is something that we can actually replicate to other people. So like, and before we do like the waste banks, we actually conduct surveys too on what motivate people in registering to the waste banks, and what are the hindrances to like not registering to the waste banks, right? So yeah, I think like motivate people, of course, like first is the money, and second actually a lot of environmental awareness, because especially from people that is already like in the middle to up like consumption level, so like they actually have the sense of awareness to do this. And but what is actually happening is that what is hindering them is that sometimes they don't know where to do it.
Right.
So that's why we want to make we can call it a movement. So like it's a pilot project that we're doing. So we do this in this particular community, and then when people hear about it, like I personally believe that we can have like we can scale it up in the future, so that more people can actually manage their waste.
Right. So what you're doing actually reminds me also of another principle here at Global Future X that is part of collaborative governance, where we believe that when you want to tackle one issue, you have to consider many different dimensions. Like if you're going to solve waste, for example, you will not be able to solve it unless you also understand the there is an economic dimension to
Yeah.
it, or there is a social welfare dimension to it, which we've been talking about, right? And even gender as well, right?
That's true.
And this is what I want to get to next, and because you are a leading figure, I would say, in the field of social development, in social enterprise, and how do you see the women representation in this space, and what would you encourage for women to do? You know, should they get into this space? Are we having enough women here in this space, or what kind of support can be provided for women who are working in this field?
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting question, Azira, because it reminded me of my first job actually when I was working for UNDP here in Indonesia. So like my first project was about recycling industry, but specifically for electronic waste industry, and it was in East Java. So like I was there, like there are some area in East Java that a lot of people are doing like small scale recycling, and what I did there was like I tried to talk to like the owner, like I did like gender assessment there, and what I see is that with women work, especially those we still can't consider this as informal sector, because like it's still like a very smaller scale. I see it as like it's quite the same with other women work in the informal sector, which are like the lack of recognition and also like the lack of valuation itself. Because one of the examples, like women in the sector, they are the first one who are facing the waste. So like when waste came to them, like they are the first one who see it. So like it gives them more exposure towards like the danger of the waste itself, right? Because you don't know what it is. And then at the same time, they are actually verbally recognized as to be more meticulous in sorting the waste. They are more meticulous compared to like the man itself, which I think there's a value to it, right? But then how do people value something? It's true, like their recognition maybe like from their salary, but they are still paid lower because they are women, and not because of like the skills, even though they are more meticulous, even though they got more exposure towards this thing. So I think that's still quite the same with like other women work in other sectors as well. And I think as a woman myself, being in this industry, so I always maybe I compare myself with my partner that I joined in building Nara Synergy together, right? So I think the way I see it...
He's a male.
He's a male, yeah. He's a male. And how I see it is that there are things that he can do that I may not be able to do. There are things that I can do that he may not be able to do, and how we complement each other in building this together, right? And how that kind of thing could be valued, you know? So like I've never seen myself as like higher than him or lower than him, but it's just like, okay, we're complementing each other. We're doing something that I cannot do this without him. Maybe he cannot do this without me, right? So like how we value it equally, I think that's really matters. And I think it's from this experience, I hope like a lot of women are also like more willing to be in the sector, because maybe like it's a lot of operational work or a lot of like things that have to be done on the ground too, right? Which like the stereotypes, maybe women don't really want to do that, but I think it's coming back again to like what we can do, and regardless of our gender, but like what our strengths are. And so just do it, and let's just be more aware in how we value things.
So it's super interesting also, I think, because women are traditionally associated with like cooking or domestic work, so that waste is probably closer to women, right? And whereas actually I think it should be just like parenting, a shared responsibility between the men and women in each household, right?
Exactly.
But I think it's important like to change that mindset first, that like waste is a woman thing, you know, or like a housewife thing. It's actually a shared responsibility between all of us, you know, as individuals and also as part of households and communities. And then secondly, as you mentioned, when we go into like making waste management part of your professional career, you should not see this space as just a space where only men can contribute, but actually women can contribute too.
Yeah.
Even in operations and logistics. I know you've told me like a couple of, stories where you actually have to also do stuff that are traditionally associated with men. So I think it's very interesting. And yeah, I think, in the previous episode, we also talked about the importance of having a women role model that we can look up to. And I was very privileged because I went to an all-girl high school. So from very early on, I was never exposed to this notion that there are only certain things for men, only certain things for women. Because we had to take care of security, logistics, and all these things when we were doing external events and things like that. But not everyone is as privileged as that. And I think role models are very important, and we're not just talking about ministers, or very, very prominent people at the global level, but people like you who are leading social movements can really make a difference, as you mentioned. Once we've talked about like community and then like private sector role, we also need to talk about the policy, right? Yeah. Because I think you were also talked about earlier about the importance of scaling things up and mainstreaming, and I know that the government's role is very important in that regard, right?
Yeah.
And how has your observation been when it comes to policy making and governance, government-led governance here in the waste management sector?
Yeah, I think it is very important, first of all. Because, I think for something like waste, for something that is very big already, like, of course, there is a need to, from the government to actually, do something, like, to enforce, like, a certain kind of policy.
Yeah.
And, of course, like, waste problem is not only from government or like from producer or like from community, but it has everyone have to work together for like this initiative. So and there is a growing one in the global level and also like in the national level. Mm-hmm. For instance, there are initiatives such as like the task force to prevent leakage, plastic leakage to the ocean, that is initiated by the president itself, and then at the same time it involves like 13 ministries are involved, joint forces to like do something towards like the waste itself. And I also understand that the government has already enforcing, regulating how like the producers need to like collect their waste as well through like the extended producer responsibility. Yeah. So I think that is also like a very good initiative where like producers need to make like roadmap in how do they create like a take back mechanism from the waste that they produce, right? Because maybe it would be easier for certain types of waste that could be recyclables or that has values, like for instance, like those in the informal economy that is trying to like take the waste, they want the valuable materials, right? But like, what about waste that doesn't have values for like the recyclings? What do we want to do about it, right? And also like in the waste sector, it's like the problems such as like the organic waste as well, and also like the plastics that cannot be recycled. How do we actually do it? And I think initiatives from like the bottom up is also like very, very good. I think because it catches like the government's attention as well, right? For instance, like we know what happened in the landfill back then, and there was like explosion of the landfill because of its overcapacity and because it's like not well managed. So from there, like the government took actions actually on that one, and then from like rivers, let's say, we caught the attentions because one of Indonesia's river is like the most polluted in the world. So government take actions because of it, right? And there are a lot of actions that we can do as an individuals and also community that can actually try to light up like attentions from like the government itself. And I think that way is actually very effective in making the government move itself. Yeah.
So it's good that this issue has caught the attention of our policymakers, not only in the national level, but also at the global level. But when we're talking about waste, local is also very important, right? Like local governments play a very important role. And so everybody needs to like chip in together to like solve this issue. I think going forward in terms of policy making, it's important that policymakers continue to listen to both the private sector and community sector, who will actually play a role in implementing those policies and regulations, right? And we want to make sure that policies are targeted and can really be effective in solving issues. So, I think going forward, in the previous episode, we also talked about the importance of listening. And I think we're also touching here again, like policymakers need to continuously have dialogues with all these people that are impacted, but not forget as well that there is a very high degree of informality in the waste management space, right? And oftentimes maybe these people don't really have a mechanism to kind of channel their aspirations, for example, to the government, right? So we hope that Nara Synergy and people like you who are leading social movements can help bring voices from these people also to the policymaking level, so that the great initiatives that you do can be replicated across provinces, across regions, and we can really see systemic change.
Yeah, definitely. I think we cannot take actions on something that we don't know. So I think it's very important. Like this thing is actually highlighting, right? Like the Citarum or like the landfills, they are highlighting. But I think I understand like the government is making efforts, right? They have like certain targets on like waste management. They try to achieve like 100% of waste management by 2025 and like reduce waste by like 70%. And I think that's like a very great initiatives. And I also think like they are actually like opening space for like more collaborations and more like ideas. What we can do? What can we do like as community even, right? And for like the producers, like they're trying to like regulate it better, so that I think from there then we can see like what can we actually do to like solve this waste problem together. And at the same time, it's also important to create like innovative ways to like solve this problem together, like also in providing incentives or better recognition as well in terms of policy for like those in the informal economy.
And also technology, right? Maybe waste management technologies going forward can be more advanced. But we don't only need the tools. We actually need to make sure that the tools are contextualized to the places where we want to roll out these technologies and initiatives, right? So going forward, I think Indonesia has a lot of international partnerships already also in this space. And it's our collective homework, I think, to contextualize these global level solutions to make sure they can be implemented well in Indonesia, even down to the smallest of places or households and even us as individuals.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's very important for like initiatives anywhere, like from the global level or also like from the community level to really understand like what are the contexts in that particular area, right? So that we can work together in creating a solution that is actually practical for the people, that is actually beneficial for the government to see the situation better and to make things more transparent, right? So that like it could lead into something better. And when we talk about technology, we also like we see a lot of initiatives, I think, in the space that is starting to like digitalize the waste collection, or like even digitalizing the waste banks, or and I think these are very good initiatives where we can collaborate and work together, and maybe in the future we can from the information, like the data that we collect, we can make projections like in this area, maybe if you put like this one material recovery facility, let's say, like how much waste that you can actually reduce from that community. And it's not only in the city, but also like it could be used to like other areas as well. Especially I think Indonesia also has a lot of islands that may be untouched, right? And not only untouched, but like when our waste leak to the ocean, maybe it could be like stranded into like this particular area, and nobody is really like doing something there, right? So I think that's very important as well, like how we use technology to do this. And maybe people can also report like if they see something and they report it, so like it can get the attention as well. So I think that's the importance of the role of technology in solving this problem.
And you touched a very important point about Indonesia being an archipelagic country, because it's geographical transportation is quite difficult. And when we're talking about, like, for example, recycling plants, maybe they can only be concentrated in certain areas that have large population areas, right? So I think it's also the homework of policymakers to think about how to make recycling plants or technologies in these less populated areas be also appealing from like a business standpoint, right? Because I think to make it sustainable, you have to inject like an economic element to it, right? You need to make it a sustainable business or source of income, for example, for people to want to be, you know, engaged in that for a long time.
Yeah, that's very true, because like maybe like you mentioned, recycling plants, they're concentrated in several areas, but like if we want to transport the waste to that particular area, there's like logistic feeders, like the carbon footprints, and there are like a lot of problems. You cannot just like transport waste straight away, right? And but how maybe it doesn't have to be like sophisticated recycling plants, but you can actually do it like smaller scale, like the one in East Java, right? Like you have it in the community where like people in a more remote area can actually like start to do it. And it starts with education. It starts with like people are willing to be there and like talking to this community and like really try to do something, and maybe they can get the value as well from the ways that they are having, right? So
wow, there's a lot to unpack, right?
That's true.
Indonesia's waste management landscape, there are a lot of issues, but I mean, I'm naturally quite pessimistic, but talking to you today, it's made me more hopeful in our path forward. We are very grateful to have had this conversation with you. We touched on, I think, virtually all of the issues in the waste management landscape, but it's our collective homework going forward on what we do also with the information that we have, right? Like you and me, like we've had, you know, privileges of actually knowing all these things, and it's also a matter of like, what do we do with the information we have? And as long as we can at least do something about it, hopefully it creates that ripple effect or spillover effect, as you mentioned, right? So we shouldn't lose hope. Let's start taking actions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Angeline, for having a chat with us today. Again, congratulations for Nara Synergy, and we look forward to more and more initiatives from Nara Synergy as well as from yourself in leading social movements in the waste management space and in also making lives better for the informal workers in Indonesia, maybe even globally. Right?
Thank you so much, Azira. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to see what you're doing as well with Global Future Acts.
Thank you so much, Angeline, for speaking with us here today. It's been a very insightful conversation. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Azira. I'm very happy to be here as well.
Yes. And for the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Breaking Barriers Season 1, Episode 3 with Angeline Callista, Managing Director of Nara Synergy. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Let's solve the future now.